Welcome to the first lesson of my Ancient Greek course. This is a course in 10 video lessons in Ancient Greek for beginners. My focus is on the language of classical Athens, but my hope is that the course will also be useful for students preparing to study New Testament Greek. To follow the course, you don't need any particular textbook or indeed any textbook at all, but you will find it handy to have next to you a copy of the Greek alphabet, particularly for the first few lessons. The focus of this first lesson is the Greek alphabet. Let's start with an easily recognisable group of letters. These letters all have something in common. See if you can work out what it is. If you need any help, I think you'll find help if I give you the capitals of each of these letters. So first of all, here we have alpha, the letter that's pronounced A, corresponding to English A. This is an epsilon, corresponds to our E, always pronounced E, as in the word pet or bed. The third letter, that is an iota, corresponding to I in English. Notice that in Greek it doesn't have a dot on top. Fourth one, an omicron. This is an O, always pronounced O, never O. Finally, we have U. This is upsilon in Greek. Its capital is written like this. So its lowercase version looks more like our U in English script, but its capital looks like an English Y. This word upsilon can be transliterated, that means it can be turned into the English letter U or Y. So, those are your Greek vowels. But there are 2 more vowels to add because there are 7 vowels in Greek. So I'm going to add one here. This one, which looks like an N but with a long tail, is another E, and this is a long E. In English, if I write a line over it, we would pronounce that as air. Its capital actually looks like the English letter H. So that is air. We call that the letter eta. One other of these vowels has also got a long version, and it's this one here. This is omega. That is a lowercase omega, and here is the capital omega, looking like that. And that is the sound of that is something cross between or, as in would you like cheese or cake, and O, as in oh, I would like them both. So the sound of that will probably be something like this, or. And that's different to the omicron above, which is pronounced O. Now, before we leave the vowels, I want to show you something else which Greek does with them. If a vowel begins a word, you'll see a little sign on top of it, and that sign might look like this, a tiny C placed right over the top of the middle of the vowel. Looks like a C, but it's not a C. If you see that sign above the vowel, then you should treat it as an H. So alpha with a little C above it should be pronounced ha. Similarly, epsilon should be pronounced he. And then we have hi, ho, and hu going along the line. And of course you can do this with the other vowels as well. So if you want to say hair or ho, then again we put this little sign above those vowels. And we call this sign a rough breathing sign. It's not a letter, but it's a symbol to say that you breathe on that initial vowel. But what if a word begins with a vowel and you don't want to put the letter H before it? You don't want a rough breathing. Well, you still need to tell your reader that there's no rough breathing, so instead Greek uses a smooth breathing. So we'll get rid of the rough breathing there and replace it with a breathing in the other direction. And if you put the breathing there in that direction, that tells the reader that the sound that you want the word to begin with is simply ah. So we can change some of these. If I change the breathing on top of the iota there to a breathing in that direction, I've changed it from he to I. Let's change the one at the end of the line now, turned it the other way round, and I've changed it from hu to u. But every word in Greek that begins with a vowel must have a breathing on that vowel to tell the reader whether you should put the h before it or not. Now this works for capitals too, but the only difference is that for capital letters the breathing goes just a little bit before the letter. So let's put some breathings on the capital letters. I will just put a few randomly here, and you can work out which way round the breathing goes, how you should pronounce the letters. Because they're capitals, I put them just to the left of the letter, not absolutely on top. So if we can read the first one, it's ha. Then read along with me, I, ho, hu. And then in the second row, I put a smooth breathing first, so it's and then ho. We're now going to move on to some consonants, and I want to start with 5 consonants which most closely resemble ones in our alphabet. So we have this, which is beta, very much like our B. The capital letter is the same as our B. The lowercase letter is only different because it has this tail. Makes it look a bit like a German double S. Now we have this one, which is delta. The capital letter resembles the shape of a delta, such as the Nile Delta, a river delta. And delta is the Greek letter D. The next, rather pretty, and this is the equivalent of our Z, and the capital is identical to our Z, and that's called a zeta, generally pronounced zd, as though it's spelt SD in English. That's for pronunciation only. The next one should be very easy. It's a T, a tor. These two should join. Very much like our T, except it doesn't rise above the crossbar, and there's a tiny little tail. The capital is identical to our T. Finally, kappa, or K, and kappa uppercase is very easy. So the sounds of these are B, D, D, T, T, and K. Now, if we put some of these Greek vowels and consonants together, we should be able to make some words. And the words I'm going to make now are English words. They're not Greek, but I'm just using Greek letters. So if I put these down, see if you can read them. And they are in turn, each of them, bat, kit, and bed. Hope you didn't find that difficult. Remember, what we're doing now is not learning Greek words. These are English words, but we're learning to get to grips with the Greek alphabet. So what we're doing is not translation, but it's transliteration. And it's a really important first step to mastering the Greek language. Now we're going to meet some more consonants. These ones are a little bit more complicated because they resemble letters in our alphabet which are different. So, for example, we have this. It looks very much like our P, but it's not a P. The capital, again, doesn't help us because it looks like a P. It's not a P. This is the Greek letter rho, and we transliterate it as an English R. We then have this one, which looks very much like a Y. It's not, it's a gamma. We can see that perhaps if I take that letter and I fill in the top of it around here, perhaps give it a little tail, it's beginning to look more like a G. In fact, in Greek writing, we often write it like that. That's how I normally write it, with curling round the bottom. But in print, you're more likely to find it written like this, without a curly tail. Capital gamma looks very different. That's the size of, that's the shape of a capital gamma. So that's the gamma, and that letter is G. The third and last letter on this in this group looks like a V. It's not. Its capital can help you out. The capital does look like our version. This letter is a letter N. We call it a letter nu. So we're able to do a little more transliteration now. So 3 more words for you to read, written with Greek letters. So let's go over these. The first one is tar. I hope you avoided the temptation to call that tap. So that one's tar. The second one I wrote is rug. I want to come back to that one in a moment, but that's R-U-G, rug. And the third one should read drink, D-R-I-N-K. I said I wanted another word on this rug here. In Greek, if you remember, every vowel that starts a word must have a breathing on it. So here is a vowel, an alpha. If that comes at the beginning of the word, you'll either get a rough breathing on it, in which case you pronounce it ha, or a smooth breathing on it, in which case you pronounce it a. Well, Greek also adds a breathing to every R when it starts a word. So if R comes at the beginning of the word, as you saw over here with rug, and of course rug's not a Greek word, it's actually an English word, I just used Greek letters for it. But if it starts a Greek word, you will always find a breathing on it, and the breathing is always hard. This means that there are a lot of Greek words, many of them have come into English, which should be transliterated, beginning with an R, and then we add an H to express that hard breathing that always comes on top of an initial R in Greek. Think about words in English which begin RH. I don't know if you want to pause the video and write down a few of your own. I'm going to come up with a few here in a moment. Each one of these words derives from the Greek. So, for example, rhinoceros, or in fact anything to do with the nose, which begins RHI, such as rhinitis. That comes from the Greek word for nose, ris, which began with an R, a row with a breathing on it. Also, the word rhythm, one of those funny words in English. It's got no vowels in it, people say. Well, in a sense it has, because the Y here is behaving like a vowel. It is a Greek word in origin, won't surprise you. So in fact that comes from rho with a breathing on it. Upsilon, which you remember could be a Y or a U when we transliterate it. And then more Greek letters, which you're going to see later to finish it off. Now here are 4 more letters. First of all, I'm going to give you this. Perhaps it looks a little like its sound, though not everybody thinks so. Its capital, however, gives it away. This is the Greek letter mu, which corresponds to M in our alphabet. Then we have this. Sometimes people think that's an upside down Y. It's not. It's a lambda, and it corresponds to our letter L. And here is the capital. Not so helpful, that one, but that's the capital. Two more letters now, which one of them you'll certainly be familiar with, I think, from maths. This is the letter pi, or P. The capital looks the same as the lowercase, maybe it's a little less curly. The lowercase often has a little curly tail there, but that's just a flourish. So that is pi, and it's a letter P. Then I'm going to give you a letter which can be written in either of two ways. It can be written like this, or it can be written like this. The second version, I think, gives it away. Once more, it's something which might be familiar to you from maths, because the capital letter of this is used in maths. It's a sigma. So this is the letter S in Greek. Why are there two versions of lowercase sigma? Well, the answer is that if it starts the word, so we wanted to write, for example, let's stay with an English word now, transliterated into Greek. Can you read this? I hope so. Translating it letter for letter, that's an S. This is the upsilon, which we can turn into a U or a Y, but I'm going to give it a U this time. And the last letter, well done if you've remembered it, is an N. So this spells sun. Now, because the sigma starts the word, I've used this version of it. But supposing I wanted to put a sigma on the end of a word, let's again take another English word. See if you can read this one. And that's an L, an I, an O, and another N, and S on the end. So I've made the word lions, and this time I've used the alternative sigma. The rule is that this sigma is used and only used at the end of a word as a final letter. Any other time you want a sigma, for example at the start of a word or in the middle, you will use this version. Now let's do a little more practice with three more words which you should be able to read now. Remember, these are English words, but they are using Greek letters. So I'll put them down. Stop the video if you like, see if you can work out how they should sound, what words I've written, and then I will give you the answers. I'm going to give you the answers now. The top one is milk. Next one is proud. And the third one is best. Well done if you got those three words right. Now we come to the double letters. These are single letters in Greek which correspond to either two letters in English or at least to a double sound. I'll show you what I mean. Here's the first one, which may be familiar to you from maths. The capital one looks a bit bigger, and the crossbar in the middle doesn't quite join up to the ends. It is a theta, and it is transliterated with a TH in English, so th sound. The next one, we'll actually use a single letter for this, but it is a double sound. It's an X, so a double sound because an X is really a K and an S put together, if you think about how we pronounce it. Capital, it's beautiful. I don't use capitals very often in Greek, but I'll put this one on for you. Now, the next one we're going to do is a chai. It looks like an X, it's not an X. Capital is simply a bigger version of the lowercase. It transliterates into English as CH, but whereas in English we pronounce it a ch sound, in Greek we should pronounce it more of a ch, rather like the CH in the word loch, for example. So not a ch, but a ch. The next one is a phi. This is a simple circle with a vertical line going right through the middle of it. The capital version is the same but bigger, sometimes with these little lines across the bottom and the top. So it's a phi, its sound is f, or an f, or it can be transliterated as an f in English. Finally, there is the letter psi, and this is written like an upsilon with a vertical line through it, and the capital version is the same but bigger. And this letter we transliterated as PS, and we see this in many English words of Greek origin, such as psychology, psychiatry. They come from a Greek root. So it's time to practice again with a few English words made from Greek letters. And here are 3 more for you. See if you can read them as I put them up. Pause the video if you need a bit more time, but when I've written these, I'll tell you how they should sound. Remember, each one of these makes an English word. It's not a Greek word, but we are using the Greek alphabet. Right, here are the answers. First of all, thug, T-H-U-G. Next, fort. I'm going to choose to transliterate the first letter with a F rather than a PH, because that's how we write the word in English, F-O-R-T. And finally, we have the word lapse, which in English is spelt with a silent E at the end, but I don't need to put it in Greek because Greek uses no silent letters. If I were to add an E, epsilon at the end, wrote it like this, then I'd have to read that word lapse and pronounce every single letter. So since I've written it without the epsilon, the sound is lapse. If I'm transliterating it into English, well, I can put the E on or not as I choose, but that's the sound that the word has made. Now we're going to look at some Greek letters and symbols in the Christian Church. Paschal candles are always inscribed with the first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet in capitals. So we see here the alpha and the omega, an indication that Jesus is the first and the last letter, the beginning and the end. We also see on this candle, though not on every Paschal candle, 2 other Greek letters which we see quite often in Christian symbolism. And that is here in the middle of the candle, you can see the letter Chi, and superimposed above it, the letter Rho. So if we put these side by side, they will be written like this. These 2 letters, Chi and Rho, are a shorthand, if you like, because they're the first 2 letters of this longer word, which, if you can read it aloud, is Christos, the Greek for Christ. And as early Christians had to use secret symbols, the Chi Rho was a way of identifying themselves as Christian. Another Christian symbol is the ichthus, or fish. Now this one is very clever. If you look at these words here, they each contribute to it. First of all, Iesus. As you know, there is no J in Greek, so the I is as close as we can get to this sound. So Jesus is Jesus. Then, as you already know, Christos means Christ. The next word I'm going to give you is theou, theta. Theou is actually a word in the genitive case. If that's something you've met in your other studies, then you'll know that it's often translated in English with an apostrophe S. So theou means gods. Then huios means son. And the final word here is soter, and soter means saviour. So, early Christians, looking for a sign by which they could be identified in secret, could make a word using the first letters of each of these words. So if you take the initial iota of Jesus and the chi of Christos, the theta of Theou, the upsilon of Huios, and the sigma of Soter, and you put them beside each other, iota, give it a breathing, chi, theta, upsilon, and a sigma, and this time I'm going to use the final sigma because it's the end of the word. These letters spell the Greek word ichthus, which means fish, and that gave the early Christians a secret symbol which they could use to identify themselves. And you find it in many places. You find it in Roman Christian tombs, in the catacombs, for example, and sometimes you see it on the back of cars today. So it's a symbol which has survived through many centuries. And finally, to practice your reading and your fluency, here are some Greek words which are also words in English. For the first three, there's a picture to help you. The last three, you're on your own. Take a moment to pause the video and see if you can transliterate these letter by letter. And these are real Greek words this time, and also real words in English. And here are the answers. Drama, which in Greek meant a done thing, something which was done, something which was performed. Climax, the K in Greek, the kappa in Greek, is very often written as a C in English. In fact, it's more often written with a C than it is with a K. Climax in Greek actually meant a ladder. So you can see its similarity to the word climax today, which really means perhaps the peak of something. As for the next one, it is isosceles, a word which literally means equal-legged in Greek. And there you see both the E's in play, the short epsilon and the long eta, which we pronounce air. Now the words which didn't have pictures. First of all, analysis, then iris, and finally, diagnosis. Well done if you got all of those right. In the next video, we're going to start looking at some real Greek words and some Greek grammar and putting some sentences together. Do join me then.